Hey there, Amanda with A Happy Homestead, and today is the first part of a series about sourdough. I am so excited to do this with you today. I'm going to show you how to make your own sourdough starter. What is a sourdough starter? Well, it's basically a house for yeast, and the house consists of flour and water. This is my starter that I created and started about 2 years ago. Meet Giuseppe. This is Giuseppe. You have to name your starter. So Giuseppe and I do all kinds of wonderful things together. In fact, this morning, we just baked this whole wheat sandwich loaf. I bake our sandwich loaf about once a week. We don't buy bread anymore. Really, like we don't buy hamburger rolls, bread, sandwich bread, or boulets, or what else? Biscuits. Like we make all of it. It's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. This is a focaccia, a sourdough focaccia I made. That's hard to see probably. I just made this yesterday for our dinner last night, and it has homegrown tomatoes, sun-dried tomatoes, rosemary and asparagus, all from the garden. And it is so good. Oh, and garlic. Oh, so delicious. So, sourdough starter is basically your yeast, right? If you've baked bread or done anything with yeast at all, you're familiar with instant yeast, the granulated yeast. And that's what most bakers do, most bakers use. So why would you want to use sourdough? Couple of reasons. Yeast can be expensive. I bought a huge, I don't even know what the package was, but a huge package at Costco. It was right when the pandemic began. So 2 years probably now. And this is all that's left. I think it made 2 or 2.5 quarts. So I've gone through about 1.5 quarts of it over a 2-year period. Now, if you bake as much as I do, yeast gets expensive. And this is where your sourdough starter is your hero and will save your pocketbook as well as your health. The other reason is the health reason. Sourdough is basically a fermented product. The yeast are digesting the flour, the grains, and they're fermenting them. And so people actually are able to have less digestive issues with sourdough bread versus any other traditional bread. So as I'm going through this today, I am using flour, real flour. We are not a gluten-free house. If that is something that pertains to you and your family and your lifestyle, feel free to continue along for enjoyment purposes, but you're going to want to have a gluten-free starter. So you can go buy a sourdough starter. There are plenty of them online. You can even go like to the San Francisco Sourdough Company, the one that's like right there on Fisherman's Wharf, and purchase a dehydrated starter from them. That would be kind of cool. But why? You can just create one yourself. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. So all you need, flour. I'm using all-purpose flour, water. I'm using a quart mason jar. You want something with a wide enough opening and you want something clear. The whole point is to feed the yeast, right, and have it grow. And so you want to make sure that you can see that. And I use a rubber band on my quart jar. So I'll put the rubber band on where the level is, and that way I can tell how much it's grown and if it's doubled. Really simple hack. And then you're going to want to cover your sourdough. You need to let it breathe. So I just use a piece of scrap fabric with a canning ring. And this allows the sourdough to breathe and capture the yeast in the air while also not letting bugs in. Because that's what you're doing. You're putting water and flour in your jar, mixing it up, and then you're capturing the natural yeast in the air. So let's start. I'm going to use grams. I always use grams. For some reason, it's just easier for me. But the whole point is you're going to be putting equal amounts of flour and water. It's so simple. Don't overcomplicate it. So I'm going to start. Let's start with 50 and see what that looks like. And again, I'm weighing this so I can get semi-accurate. Okay, that's 51. I'm going to go to 75. Yep, 75 exactly. And then I'm gonna do 75 grams of water. Now I could tare this. You can tare it back to 0 so you can go to 75. I'm just gonna double it and go to 150. You're gonna wanna pour slowly. When you get towards the number you're looking for, stop and kind of reassess, because water weight is heavier than you're gonna think it is. So now we're at 150. So this is equal amounts of flour and water. And I'm just gonna stir it up. And it's gonna be like a paste-like consistency, and that's okay. But you're gonna wanna make sure all of the flour is really mixed in with the water. You'll notice the consistency is pretty thick, but as you go through day by day within this process, it'll get a little bit more viscous, and that's because the yeast are in here digesting. And that's it. Okay, now I'm gonna put the lid on with the fabric. That's what it looks like. So yeah, your jar will get kind of messy. It is what it is. I'm gonna put the rubber band on. Honestly, at this point, day 1, day 2, day 3, the rubber band's not gonna matter. I'm just gonna put it on there, and I'm not even gonna get it at the level. I'm just putting it on so that I remember this is what I'm going to need in a few days. I just always keep the rubber band on the jar. And now you're gonna set that out on the counter and you're gonna leave it there. You're gonna come back tomorrow and do the exact same thing. And I'm gonna show you how to do that. But we're actually gonna take part of that away and then add a 1-to-1 ratio back in. So what you're doing is you're taking away some of the old food and putting in some new food, and just keep doing that day after day. So that's day 1, that's it. You're gonna leave it on the counter. So I'll see you tomorrow for day 2.